So this section involves solving equations when you have to factor. And this section 5.7. So the zero factor property states that suppose A and B represent two real numbers. If AB equals 0, then A equals 0 or B equals 0. And we're going to use this property to solve the following equations. Now, how do you know you have an equation? When you see an equal sign in the problem, that's when you have to solve for the variable. Now, here are the steps for solving equations that involve factoring. The steps are: first, get everything on one side of the equation. And that just means that you're going to have a polynomial. So you're going to have something equals 0. You want everything to be on the left side equals 0, or everything on the right side and 0 is on the left. As long as 0 is on one side of the equal sign and everything else is on the other side, you've set up the problem to get started. The second step is to factor. So if you see that your polynomial is factorable, use those factoring techniques that you've learned in the last 5 sections. Then you're going to set each factor to 0, and then you're going to solve for the variable. Now, when do you follow these 4 steps? When you see that there is an equation and it involves a degree greater than 1. For example, number 1. What is the degree? The degree is 2 here. And you have an equation, so you're going to follow those 4 steps. Now notice that for this particular problem, everything is already on one side of the equal sign. So step 1 has been done for us. Now we need to factor the left side. So how do you factor this type of situation? Well, this is a trinomial, so you need to use the AC method, or because this has a leading coefficient of 1, you really don't have to do the AC method, because when the leading coefficient is 1, then we automatically know we will have an x times an x to give us that x squared. Now we need to figure out factors of -6 that add to 5. So you have 1 and 6, you have 2 and 3. What will multiply to give us -6, but at the same time add to give us -5? So would it be -1 plus 6 to give us +5? Yes, it would. So our factors would be x minus 1 times x plus 6 equals 0. So that is the second step when you are solving equations involving factoring. The next step would be to set each factor to 0. Now, what do we mean about factors? Well, one factor is x minus 1. And the other factor is x plus 6. So all we're doing is setting both of those factors to 0. And that goes back to our 0 property rule that states that if AB equals 0, then A equals 0 or B equals 0. Those factors equal 0. So we're going to put x minus 1 equals 0, or x plus 6 equals 0. And then you're going to solve for x for each one of those. So over here we will add 1 to both sides to get x equals 1. And on the right we will subtract 6 to get x equals -6. So our solutions are 1 and -6. Moving on to number 2. we have 9x squared minus 6x. Now, what would you do first to that particular problem? Well, hopefully you said GCF. So if you said GCF, you are right. So the GCF here is 3x. So we have 3x remaining minus 2 equals 0. So we have the factor 3x as one factor, and the other factor is 3x minus 2. We're going to set each of these to 0. So 3x equals 0, or 3x minus 2 equals 0. On the left side, we're going to divide by 3 to get rid of that 3. And so one of our solutions is x equals 0. And on the right side, we're going to add 2 first. We're going to get 3x equals 2. Then we're going to also divide by 3. So the other solution to this problem is x equals 2/3. And let me also say this, because our degree was 2 for the first problem, that's why we ended up with 2 answers. Because our degree was 2 in the second problem, we also ended up with 2 different answers. Moving on to number 3, we have 4x squared minus 25 equals 0. Notice that there is no GCF for this problem. So we're going to figure out what else we can do to this problem. It is a binomial, and notice that it is a difference of squares. So square root of those perfect squares, we're going to have 2x and we're going to have 5. The signs will be different, plus, minus. Then we set each factor to 0 and we solve for the variable. On the left side, what we need to do is subtract 5 first, and we're going to get 2x equals -5. Then we're going to divide by 2 to get x equals -5/2. On the right side, we're going to add a 5. We get 2x equals 5. Divide by 2, we get x equals 5/2 again. So we have a -5/2 and a +5/2 as our solutions to this problem. Moving on to number 4, we have 2x squared plus 3x equals 2. If we go back to our steps, what we need to do first is get everything on one side of the equation. So in order to get the 2 onto the left side, we need to subtract 2 from both sides. That will give us 2x squared plus 3x minus 2 equals 0. Notice we have 3 terms, so we're dealing with a trinomial because there is no GCF. So this is the case when you are using the AC method, when you're multiplying a times c, which is 2 times -2, which is -4. Are there factors that will work so that when you add the factors together, you get 3, and when you multiply, you get -4? So it looks like to me that a -1 plus 4 will work for a +3. So let's expand this to 2x squared plus 4x minus 1x minus 2. We're going to factor here. Get 2x times x plus 2. Take out a -1, x minus 2. So we have x plus 2. X plus 2 times 2x minus 1 equals 0. So our factors are x plus 2 times 2x minus 1. However, since we are solving an equation, we need to continue on by setting each one of these factors to 0. So we're going to set x plus 2 equals 0, and also 2x minus 1 equals 0. On the left side, we subtract 2 from both sides to get x equals -2. And on the right side, we need to add 1 first, but we're not done because we still have 2x equals 1. We need to divide by 2 in order to get the second solution, which is x equals 1/2. Moving on to the next one, we have x minus 2 times x minus 6. And it should be equals -3 here. So that makes it very unique. It makes it a little extremely challenging if it's just if it's a number other than 0. So here we go. Notice that this is not 0. So we're going to have to break this problem down first so that we can get that -3 to the left side. Now you can really go ahead and put the -3 on the left side, but I would rather FOIL this out. So x times x is x squared, x times -6 is -6x, -2 times x, -2x, -2 times -6 plus 12. Then we have that -3. Let's bring our like terms together. X squared minus 8x plus 12 equals -3. Now let's get that 3 to the other side. So that means we need to add 3 to both sides because we had a -3. I wouldn't subtract 3 because then I will get -3 minus 3, which is -6. I want the right side to be 0, so I have to do the inverse of -3, which is plus 3. All right, then we would get x squared minus 8x plus 15 equals 0. And now we recognize this as a trinomial that we can factor. It is the easy case, so we don't necessarily have to do AC method because we know those first, in this first position here will be x and x. Now we need to figure out the factors of 15 that'll give us -8. So I'm thinking -3 and -5 will give us -8. So x minus 3 times x minus 5 are the factors to this particular trinomial. Then we will set each one of these factors to 0. We will add 3 to the left side to get a +3 as one of our solutions. And we will add 5 to get a +5. Moving on to the last problem. Notice for this problem, we actually do have a GCF, which is x. We take that x out and we get x squared minus 2x minus 63, which is a trinomial. So we haven't factored completely just yet. It's an easy case trinomial, which is nice. We know that we don't have to do the AC method for that, but we do need to figure out what factors of -63 would add to -2. I'm thinking 9 and 7 somehow, and a -9 because that will take the sign of the higher number. So our factors are x times x plus 7 times x minus 9. Now, how many factors do we have? We have 3 different factors, right? We have x plus 7, we have x minus 9. We're going to set each one of those to 0. So x equals 0, x plus 7 equals 0, and x minus 9 equals 0. So notice we have 3 different answers, and notice that our degree was also 3. So x equals 0 is one solution. We're going to subtract 7 to get the second solution, which is -7. And we're going to add 9 to both sides to get the third solution, which is 9. So the solutions are, and if you had to write it in order, what would be the lowest number? -7 would be the lowest number, right? 0 and 9. So this is another way to write the answer. But on the test, I am fine with you circling x equals 0, x equals -7, x equals 9. Well, this concludes the video on how to solve equations that involve factoring.